My name is Whitney Huell. I'm a professional ballet dancer with Kansas City Ballet in Kansas City, Missouri. I've been with them for 6 seasons now. And I grew up in South Carolina, in Columbia and Irmo. I went to Dutch Fork Middle and Dutch Fork Elementary School as well. And then I went on to the Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities in Greenville, South Carolina. And I studied dance there more seriously, and that's when I decided I wanted to be a professional ballet dancer. From there, I went to Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, and studied ballet there, and I also got a bachelor's of science in ballet and an outside field in psychology. From there, I joined Ballet West in Salt Lake City, Utah. I was there for 7 years, 2 years in the second company, and then 5 seasons in the main company. And then from there, I wanted to change, so I auditioned, and I got into Kansas City Ballet, and I have been there ever since. And I've been able to do a lot more roles and more of what I was hoping to do when I started my career there.
So I heard you mention something about a second company versus the main company. What's the difference in that? What's that?
So second companies were pretty much created for younger dancers who were just entering the field and the company. And they're younger, they still need a little bit more training, but it's great because they have opportunities to dance with the main company, and it's kind of like a road to the main company, like kind of like a little bit of red tape, but it's a way into the company. You get to be affiliated with them, you get to even dance in the performances with the main company, but it's almost like a training experience.
So it sounds like you've been doing dance a long time. What age did you start?
I started at age 5 at a studio called D. Crump School of Dance in Columbia, South Carolina. And yeah, I started there, and I was taking ballet and gymnastics there. And then I kind of just realized, ballet was more my passion, so I stuck, primarily with ballet after that. And then I did some summer programs at Columbia Music Festival Association. During the summer, they had like 2-week programs, and I furthered my training there, and it was there that I auditioned for the Governor's School. So it all kind of came into play between, my first studio and then the summer programs I took at CMFA.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a dancer, or was there ever a moment that you maybe were unsure or kind of considered some other paths?
Well, when I was younger, I didn't know being a ballet dancer was a profession. Like, I was just doing it for fun. And it wasn't until my teacher showed us a video of Giselle, and there were adults dancing. And I was like, why are these adults dancing? I was really confused. I was like, oh, you mean I could do this like as an adult? And so after I saw that video, I was really excited because I was like, oh, I can actually do this. It's not just a hobby. So that was pretty enlightening for me. And so yeah, once I did learn that it was actually a job, I wanted to do that. Yeah.
In terms of the job, what does a day in the life of a dancer look like?
Okay, well, it starts, at my company, we start at 9:30, classes at 9:15 actually. And we go in and we take what's called like a ballet class to warm up our bodies. And it consists of bar and center. And bar is just like a portable thing that you hold on to, and you do a lot of exercises at the bar. Then they get you warm, and then you remove the bar and you come into center, and then you dance in the center. All these combinations are to get you warm for the day. So you start off just doing bending your knees, doing plies, and then you end the class with jumps, big jumps, grand allegro. And then after that, we would have a 15-minute break, and then we have 3 hours of rehearsal. And you don't always have all hours of rehearsals, but in a busy day, you would do 3 hours of rehearsal, and you always have a 5-minute break after every hour. if you're an AGMA company, which is a union that we have. And then we have an hour break for lunch. So our break is from 2 to 3. And then from 3 to 6, we have 3 more hours of rehearsal. And then the day ends at 6. And sometimes, I teach a little bit. So on Wednesdays and Thursdays, I drive to another studio and I teach for a couple of hours. So sometimes my days go until about like 8:30 at night. But typically I'm done at 6 o'clock.
For some of our students who may have never seen ballet, or maybe think it's all wearing tutus and wearing pink, what does ballet kind of look like in 2020?
Yeah, I think that's what's been great. It's not so traditional anymore. Like ballet has gone in different directions. There's more contemporary ballet. You see a lot of ballets that don't have pink tights, pink shoes, more like flesh tone. Sometimes ballets in just a leotard. So it has really branched out from just like the tutu, pink tights, pink shoes. Like is a huge scope now of what ballet is and the different ways it can go. And so at Kansas City Ballet, we do like classical ballet, which is like Sleeping Beauty, Nutcracker, but we also have like mixed reps where we bring in more like contemporary work and more neoclassical works, which I enjoy. I like them both.
It sounds like you're on your feet a lot during the day. What role does a healthy lifestyle play in your career?
It's a very huge part of my career because I have to be fit for my job. But the good thing about it is that doing my job makes me fit. Like the more I dance, the more fit I am. And so it's kind of funny, in the beginning of the season, everybody's a little bit out of shape because we've been off for several months and then we all have to like get back into shape. And as you get back into shape, you feel better, you can do things better. And so that's like kind of the beauty of our job, is that it keeps us in shape, it keeps us strong. So yeah, it helps us. The more we do it, the better we are at it. So that's how it works.
Besides the style of dance that you do professionally, do you have any hobby styles of dance or any genres of dance that you enjoy doing as well?
Well, not so much dance, but I really like yoga. So I, especially during quarantine, I've been doing a lot of yoga and Pilates. And that's helped a lot with balance, I think, and strength, and stability in my ankles, and also core for Pilates especially. So I've been enjoying doing those things a little bit more than I get to during the season.
What are some different things that you do that help you kind of keep you at your best?
Yeah, the yoga actually, during the season, we work from Tuesday to Saturday. On Mondays, that's my day, and so I always take a yoga class, go to a studio and I take a yoga class, and it really helps me to kind of just like decompress and unwind, and just kind of zen out, because my mind, I'm sure a lot of people have like very busy minds and it's like go, 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 and that's like one time where I'm just kind of, not really thinking about anything, which is good. So that's kind of like my decompression time, my, time to myself, like more of a spiritual like experience.
Is there anybody that kind of helps you stay at your best?
Yeah, definitely both of my parents. They, put me in ballet. They encouraged me to start, moving really. And they've like facilitated me furthering my training. And they've just like been there for me, like even through, because growing up they thought it was just a hobby, and then, my mom was always very supportive, but my dad was like, you're gonna have to get a real job. But, they never discouraged me from doing what I did. And I actually think I surprised my dad when I became a ballet dancer, and he's very proud of me now, but he was a little bit skeptical, in the beginning, like, you're gonna have to do something else. But yeah, they've both been very supportive and like, pushed me to take class and stay in it. And so that's always been really helpful to have them.
We work with a lot of elementary, middle school students. What were some goals that you set for yourself around that time?
When I was in elementary and middle school, I didn't necessarily have goals, but I was very like determined. And so whatever I was doing, I wanted to be the best at it. I wanted to do my best, whether it be like school or ballet. I found like a good feeling in excelling at things that were challenging to me. So, whether it be like a math course or something like that, it wasn't always like my strong point. But, when I would actually do really well, I was like, yes, I'm doing it. So it's the same thing for ballet. And ballet is, you can't perfect it. Like, no matter if you have a good class, there's always something to work on. There's always something that could be better. And so I think that's what drew me to ballet over other styles, because you can never be perfect. Like, one thing can go like amazing, you can balance forever in one thing, but like, you come down early in something else. So there's always something to work on. There's always a challenge. And so that, I think, is what drew me to ballet and what drew me to that art form.
Did you have anybody that kind of served as a role model, either in the dance world or maybe for gymnastics or school or anyone that you kind of looked up to?
Well, when I was really young, the bigger kids at the studio I attended, I really looked up to them. My very first ballet teacher, her name was Aurora Smith. She was a dancer at the same studio, much older, and I wanted to be her. I was like, she's beautiful, and so I really aspired to be like her. And then at not Kansas City Ballet, but at Columbia City Ballet, Sylvia Dansby was, she's a black ballerina there, and so I was really, inspired by her as well. A little bit later on, when I was at Governor's School, they have this catalog called Discount Dance, and I would like to look through it to see all the different dancers, and there was a page of Misty Copeland, and I think she was at ABT school at the time, and she is in like a développé écarté, and she was just really inspirational. And so I cut the page out of the magazine, and it was on my wall at Governor's School in my dorm room, and it was just, a constant kind of figure to look up to, I wanted to dance like her. Like, I wanted to get my leg that high and, aspire to have feet and like legs like her. So it was just, an inspiration. I've never actually met her. I've seen her when I was at DTH summer program. She was taking class, and I was like, nobody wanted to go across the floor with her, but like I did. I was like, and afterwards I was like, Mom, she smiled at me. I was like so excited.
Obviously, in a physical field, your body has to be at its best. You might not always be at your best. So what are some challenges that you've had to overcome, either big or small, across your life and career?
Yeah, well, now that you're saying that, sometimes injuries can be a big barrier, and luckily I haven't had too many, but I've had like small, like minute pains that are very annoying, and then they randomly go away. Like, my ankle will hurt sometimes, but then like the next day it doesn't. There's always something. You'll learn this if you dance. Like, if it's not your foot, it's your back. If it's not your back, it's your hip. Like, it's always something, bothering you. So that's always kind of a challenge. And also just in a setting for in professional dance, it's competitive. So, you're not always going to get what you want as far as like casting is concerned or being promoted. So that's also something that's pretty challenging. Like, there are times where you're like, oh, I'm on cloud 9, I have this lead role, I'm doing it first cast. But then there's also times when, you're not doing as much. You're in the corps de ballet, which is like the big group. And, that can be kind of unsettling, especially if you feel like you deserve something more. So that's probably been the biggest challenge. Even though ballet is my passion and I love doing it every day, it's hard sometimes not getting what you want or what you think you deserve.
What can you do whenever you kind of meet those life disappointments and it's outside of your control?
Yeah, well, luckily I have a boss that's pretty open. And so, if there's been a time where, at the end of the season, I feel like, I'm not going anywhere, he has an open door. So I talk to him, I say, I was really hoping to do this and this and this. What can I work on? What could I do to be considered for these roles, And, all the times that I have spoken to him, they've been very informative and very encouraging. And a lot of times it has resulted in, better roles or, just like helping me to fix things that maybe, I was lacking, as far as technique is concerned or, articulation. And so it's always been very helpful to just talk to the people in charge to see, what you can do for a better outcome.
Sounds like you really kind of advocate that self-advocacy. So kind of if something's not sitting right with you, you kind of communicate it.
Yeah, I've learned that a lot, like, throughout my career, because in the very beginning, I was just happy to have a job and, you stay silent. It didn't work out this time. It's okay. Oh, this worked out, and then I learned that, if I don't speak up, no one's going to speak up for me. I don't have a mentor or anything like that. I wasn't lucky enough to have one, for someone to, like, tell me these things. And so finally, I realized that I needed to speak up for myself, and those times that I did, it worked out. Like, it was a positive experience. So although it's scary, I'm typically very shy, so it was really hard for me to, like, speak up and speak to my boss, but in the end it was the right decision, and I feel like it's the right thing to do.
We're going to switch gears here and talk about race and racism. So racism occurs when people treat others differently due to their race or ethnicity. This summer, the topic of systemic racism, or racism that happens between groups of people, has entered the national conversation. Specifically, Black Americans feel that they do not have the same opportunities as their non-Black neighbors. What would you like to share about your experiences as a Black female raised in the South?
Yeah, I feel like as a person of color, starting out in ballet here, you learn that you're the minority in a ballet setting. Not so much at first for me, because I started out in a studio where most of the students were Black, and I thought that was the norm because that was what I was exposed to first. But then when I furthered my training, I noticed, I'm like the only Black person in the room, like, a lot of the time. And so it can feel a little lonely, and you can feel somewhat like an outcast just simply because you're the only one. So I had to kind of push through that. Like, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but in order to continue my training, you have to do it, because basically the more I learned ballet, the more I went to different schools, I went to summer programs, I realized, it's not a field where there are very many Black individuals. So it's just something that you have to push through, and that I had to push through and just get the training, and not really let that hinder me. And so, but I have seen, like, there have been more throughout the years, but a lot of times in my life, it's just been me, But, I told some, I was speaking to a group of girls at a school, and I said, well, if it wasn't you, then there would be no one. So you have to go. Like, one girl said, I'm going to San Francisco Ballet School in the summer. Like, I'm afraid of being, like, the only one. And I was like, well, if you're not there, there's going to be nobody. So, you have to stick it through, You have to do it so that other, smaller, younger Black girls who aspire to be a dancer will feel like they can too. And then there'll be more than one, and then there'll be more than two, and then it'll be, it'll reflect what society looks like, what the population looks like. If there's 30%, Black people in a city, why can't there be 30% Black people in the ballet company,
So one thing that you kind of touched on here is the idea of representation within the field. For people that maybe pursue life paths where they might be the only one, where they might kind of feel alone or be a little bit different from their peers, do you have any kind of words of advice or anything to share with people in that situation?
Yeah, it really helps if you have someone to talk to about it. I never really felt comfortable about talking about it until kind of recently when, with Black Lives Matter and everything. And you can talk about that even if the person isn't Black, Now I feel like there's a space to speak to, your white friends or, people of different ethnicities about, the lack of representation. And I think that helps, And also, if you speak to people that, are kind of in charge of it, maybe they will have the heart to bring in more diversity. They're actually in the position to change what's happening. Maybe they'll, reach out to different schools, bring kids in to learn ballet, and so that starts from the bottom up, like if you bring more in when they're young, then they'll grow up and grow into the company, and so it won't be so sparse.
Specific to maybe racism or prejudicial preference, have you ever had experiences where you felt like you were treated differently?
Yeah, I think my first experience with racism was in a summer program. Myself and a few of my black friends were in the program, and there was a class that we took, and I noticed, we stuck together because, we knew each other, so we go across the floor in center where, there's groups that go across the floor, and we would always go together. And I noticed in this particular class that, when we went across the floor, the teacher didn't pay attention to us. And it was very strange because she would look at the group before us, give them corrections, give them encouragement. We would go, and it was like we didn't exist. And then the next group went, and it was corrections and encouragement. And it was very confusing to me. I was like, what is going on? Like, I think I'm doing it right. I think I'm performing the best I can. I know the combination. It's not like I'm slacking off. Like, all these things popped into my mind, and I really didn't realize it was racism, for whatever reason, I don't know. This person just did not acknowledge our presence in the class. And so that was the first time I experienced that. And now I know that was racism. Later on, I feel like, it's been more subtle. For instance, when I had a meeting in college with one of the dance teachers, we were talking about our path, and she was like, I think maybe you should look towards modern dance. And I was really baffled by that. She was like, yeah, maybe a company like Alvin Ailey. But it was a ballet program I was in, and she had never seen me do modern, ever. Like, even in our curriculum, we never did modern. We only had jazz. That was the only thing outside of ballet that we did. So for her to say I should join a modern company, having never seen me do modern dance, it was, I was like, well, where are you getting that from? You don't even know if I'm good at modern dance. I haven't taken very much modern dance, and so Alvin Ailey is a company of black dancers, and I feel like she thought simply because she knew that was a company for black dancers, that was the company for me, even though I had never even done that type of dance in front of her. So I felt like that was, kind of like a racist experience. And then professionally, when choreographers and stagers come in, I've had great experiences, don't get me wrong, but sometimes, you're in the room, you're in the audition kind of process where they give you a phrase, you do the phrase, and, you feel invisible. Like, you feel like they're not even trying to look at you. And it's very disheartening because, you could be working really hard. You can feel like you're really good for what the material is, but you already know, like, this person has something against you. You don't know what it is. You know it's not because of the way you dance, but it's something else. And so that has happened before as well. There have been moments where I had, like, we were paired up, and I was never called on with my partner to do to even try the phrase. And then, the ballet master would be like, oh, Whitney and so still have to go. And then the, person is like, oh, okay, yeah, let's let them try. It's very upsetting. Luckily, it hasn't happened too many times, but it has happened. And, so those are some instances.
So thinking about maybe some of this more covert racism and its impact long term, it sounds like you've had experiences kind of throughout your life and career where maybe it's less outwardly hateful, but it's still impactful. What do you think the long-term impacts are of experiences like that?
Well, I think it's really made people of color kind of change themselves around other people. Like, from things that they say or things that they do, you kind of have to be aware of how you're reacting to it. So instead of, like, if something offends, like, me, and I feel uncomfortable saying that's offensive. So therefore I have to change my behavior to be okay with their offensive behavior, you know? And so it's been like this for years where, you know, oh, they said something offensive, like about my hair or about, you know, something that they're just unfamiliar with, you know, but it's not appropriate. But yet we have been conditioned to change our behavior because of them. So we're making them feel better. We're making them comfortable, even though we're not comfortable. So there's a lot of that, and I think that is really, it kind of makes us suppress feelings of, you know, injustice, you know, even though they're very small, they're like microaggressions, but still it's an impact. And so you end up changing yourself for other people when really they should be aware of what they're saying and what they have done is not, you know, right, isn't, you know, they need to check themselves. But there have been so many years of, you know, we haven't said anything because it's uncomfortable. We don't want to make them uncomfortable, you know. So there's a lot of that going on. And so I think now that we feel like we can talk, we feel like we can say these little things have really been bothering us, like maybe you could say this, or maybe you can, you know, do this, or realize we don't say that to you, we don't try to do this to you. So I think that going forward, that's like the way to go, instead of just kind of bottling it up and suppressing it and just dealing with something that isn't right.
One thing you kind of alluded to here is the sense of like identity. It almost sounds like in public, maybe even in private, for years, it felt like you weren't able to kind of be true to yourself. I guess describe to me maybe what you feel the role of identity is and how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you are say I'm the only black female in my company, I know that I'm representing basically my race, you know? So yeah, I do want to be perfect, but I do feel like a sense of pressure to be the best that I can be, because I don't want people to think of less of my race, if that makes any sense. So I feel like you have an added pressure, not just to be your best self, but to be better than your best self, to represent your race well. So I think that pressure can be a lot, you know, and it can be a little bit lonely too, because no one else in the company, you know, aside from maybe a black male in the company, can really relate to you. You know, you can't really talk to anybody about it. And I think that's why myself and the other black dancer in the company, the black male dancer in the company, have gotten so close, is because we can actually like share experiences. We're on the same page. But, you know, we've always said, like, we always have to be better, you know? Not that we wouldn't anyway, but to be where we are, we have to do our best. We have to be our best. We can't do anything less than our best, you know?
What do you think are the unique challenges that black communities, maybe even other minority communities, maybe not even specifically the black communities, what challenges do they face?
I think there's a huge financial challenge. You know, for black individuals, like, you know, stemming from slavery, like they not having the financial means to do things. And for any field, you need money. You need to be financially secure and stable. So if you are, suffering from poverty or don't have, extra funds outside of living, it's really hard to get into different fields, especially ballet. Ballet is very expensive. Like, it's not cheap. And luckily, there are programs now for scholarships, and, I went to governor's school, and that was a public school, so it was free for me to go there. But, my parents paid for lessons up until middle school, but there was a point where they were like, this is getting really expensive. We're going to have to cut back. You need to stop dancing, and I was like, what? Like, that's not an option, I was crying for days. Like, I was so upset. But the reality of it is it's an expensive thing to keep up with, and it's something that you can't slack on. You can't go to dance one time a week and expect to be a professional dancer. You have to be dancing every day, like it's a job. So governor's school was like a savior for me because that was free training. And my parents, they're like middle class, upper middle class. And so if they're struggling to pay for my lessons, can you imagine like somebody, in the inner city or, single parent, that's going to be really, really hard for them to get to that type of training, to pay for that type of training. So it really, that's what we're facing, is like the cost to do certain things is just too much. Well, a lot of dancers don't typically go to college. They will try and join a company right out of high school, which is actually what I tried to do. But I was going to go to Dance Theater of Harlem in New York, and the year I graduated was the year they went on hiatus. So I was crushed. As a backup, I had applied to colleges, and one of them being Indiana University, which I had already deferred to the ballet program. So I had to undefer like a few weeks after I deferred, and then I ended up going there. But yeah, and it's imperative to get scholarships, because college is not cheap. I had to take out student loans, and that's a burden too, because once you're out of school, you have to pay student loans, and being a professional ballet dancer, you're not getting paid like a basketball player or a football player. You're, not making very much money, so it is a burden. Although I loved my college experience and I wouldn't change that, that is one thing that is like a huge burden, is the cost to go to college. And so that's why it's so imperative to try to get scholarships, and try to get that support. I think a more equitable society, in any field, say like ballet or science or whatever, I feel like the field should look like the population. So for instance, let's say you're in a place, in a city, where there's like 30% African American, 20% Hispanic, and then when you see this field, it should be that, in companies where there's a lot of like black presence, sometimes the ballet company doesn't have a single black dancer, and so I just don't think that represents the city well. I think they would do better having someone from their community or multiple people from their community, so that that community would want to go to the ballet. I feel like if people saw themselves on the stage, or if people saw themselves in a field, they will feel more inclined to join it, and not like it's something I can never, attain.
What do you think are some things that young people today could do to ensure a more equal space where everybody feels welcome and valued, and there's community, school, after-school program, what have you?
Yeah, I think that talking about not feeling equal, talking about being a minority, having the space to just talk with, somebody in charge, your friends, anybody, I think that creates a space that makes you feel welcome, and then being able to talk without feeling you're going to get retaliated against, like if I say this, oh, is this going to be bad for me? No, it needs to be open, where we can just, be transparent and just say how we feel, and hopefully what we say can, trigger change. Like I said, if you talk to the person in charge, maybe the person in charge has an open heart and wants to change things, but they would never know to change things if we didn't say anything. So from a young age, if you can start, talking, if you can start saying, oh, this isn't fair, I wish it was like this, maybe this would be better, people in charge will listen and can change it.
Do you have any advice or life lessons you'd like to share with young people?
Yes, I would say that whatever you do, you should try to do your best. For me, it's for me, say in ballet class, every day, ballet class is my favorite part of the day, by the way. Even in rehearsals, even if we're doing a ballet I love ballet class. So you go in, it's your time, you try to make the best of it. You work on what you need to work on. It's your time to be your best self. And so I'd say try to do that in whatever you do. Just always try to do your best and do what you're passionate about. And then I feel like if you're passionate about something and you do your best at it, that you can reach your goals or your dreams. I think it's easier to do that when you don't slack off, if you can just always be your best self and always try your hardest.